Hey guys, my name is Moon and welcome back for more Witch on the Holy Night. So last time, Alco and Alice, they found out who the witness is, right? The one running away at them at night on the third episode, right? And it was, of course, your boy, Sojiro. So we are in another episode today, or at least we're gonna start, episode, I think 5? So let's see what happens. Okay, next episode. Night of Witches, number 1, episode 5. Sojiro returned to his apartment on foot as per routine under a blanket of clouds in the night sky. The rusty stairs of his apartment building changed with each step. Out of the corner of his eye, he could see the bicycles parked by the apartment building's outer wall. He debated the pros and cons of a bicycle and how much easier life would be versus the expense, the convenience versus the necessity, but in the end, decided one was not right for him just now. Clutching the bag of apples under his arm, he took out the key to his residence.
あれば便利だけど、なくて。
He tilted his head in confusion. Yeah, why did he stop? More and more, he found himself preoccupied with such random thoughts when the real issue at hand was deciding what to do with the apples he had received. I mean, just eat it, I guess. He placed the paper bag by the sink and switched on the lights. It was just after 10 in the evening. With the end of the term exams just around the corner, he had come home an hour earlier than usual. As he made back for the kitchen to pick one of the apples to snack on, he found an envelope stuffed in his mail slot. The envelope had no name, return address, or stamp. Inside was a single piece of paper that had only the sender's name and a short message. It read,
話があるので、今夜どこそこのここに来られたし、大事なようなので、来るまでずっと待っている。言うまでもなく、他言無用。
A concise set of orders neatly written. It was signed Aoko Aozaki. She had been considerate enough to enclose a detailed map of the meeting place. Puzzled, he cocked his head to the side, then headed out the door. Afterward, upon the room's sole tenant leaving the premises, the envelope burst into flames and evaporated without a trace, as though it had never existed in the first place. I mean, that was pretty cool, yeah. But I wish they showed it to us. Like a small scene, right? Would have been nice. By the late 80s, Japan's post-war economic boom had somewhat stabilized and the city experienced a period of steady growth. The city's modernization marched on and the Japan Railway's train station, a symbol of the new era, neared completion. In Misaki's neighboring town of Yashirogi, a new symbol of its own was about to be born. Yashirogi Bread and Kitsi Land. It was Misaki's worst investment. Years later, it would be dubbed the fool's gold of the economic bubble, a relic of a bygone age.
この町には夢とか遮奪さが足りない。
10 years ago, Yashirogi's renowned Tokitsu Baking Company ran factories all across the nation. Its proprietor was a middle-aged gentleman, then age 56, by the name of Yorihiko Tokitsu, known affectionately by most as Topan. He took it upon himself to begin development on an estate on the outskirts of Yashirogi and broke ground on a recreational wonderland that he hoped to be the pride of the Misaki city. Was like a carnival? The long-awaited opening came in 1981. Its name is Kitsy Land. After 3 years of investment, this local amusement park, full of all kinds and hopes and dreams, began its short-lived tenure. It covered more than 85 square acres. Its magnificent merry-go-round dazzled all who passed through the park's gates. Its roller coasters twisted and turned about the edges of the park like a riding a Japanese dragon. Its Ferris wheel, backed beyond necessity with gimmicks, was said to have tested the limits of a modern engineering.
完璧だ。遊園地に必要なものは全て積み込んだ。
Old Yorihiko looked upon his creation and smiled. Only boosting his confidence was the fact that its grand opening was staged during a period of prosperity, the springtime of the world. But in spite of this, they splendidly miscalculated the balance between aspirations and sophistication. Its mascot, Kitsy, was poorly designed and appeared like a cheap knockoff. So it's like a dog or a panda? What is that? The park was stuffed to the brim with bread stands. Even its impossible to navigate mirror maze seemed out of date from the start. There are no dreams to be had at Kitsy Land, only nightmarish satire. Numerous trade magazines lambasted Kitsyland's shortcomings and customer attendance declined. There was even an incident where a 6-year-old strayed from his mother, had an accident and nearly died. 1986, 5 years after the park opened. The situation had grown from bad to worse and the park was hemorrhaging money. On top of everything, Yorihiko had bet everything on the success of the mascot Kitsy, retired, and Kitsyland's operations were officially in trouble. And thus, amidst the scorn of nearly all residents of the area, ended Misaki City's one and only amusement park. What's more, perhaps best described as a footnote to this debacle, the self-proclaimed Parisian artist who designed the mascot, Toki Julik, was said to have snapped his brush in mourning over the closure of the park. So are we going to be seeing these people? That's why they're getting mentioned here? Returning to the present. It was midnight and the Kitsyland of today was a shadow of its former glory. Like a doll abandoned in the corner of a toy box, the lonely park was illuminated only by light of the town that continued to live around it.
なるほど。
Sojiro closed the Yashirogi guidebook that he had picked up on the way here. The story of its history was almost difficult to believe, but he supposed this was what people referred to as entropy. The park's front gate was unlocked. When he worked here the previous time, the iron fence was locked shut with a rusty chain, but the chain was nowhere to be seen and the gate left ajar. Following the map drawn in the letter, Sojiro quickly made his way inside.
急ぎのようなんだろうけど、こんな夜中に何なんだ一体。
Sojiro complained quite out of character for him. It was probably because, in spite of his naivety, even he knew that something was amiss. Though the park was abandoned, this was still trespassing. So this is where they're meeting an abandoned amusement park. Unlawful entry, larceny, burglary. These were certainly not things or perhaps crimes that Sojiro was proud to do, but
すまない。お金は払えないんだ。ただで入って申し訳ない。
money. The real reason his conscience was gnawing at him. He clapped his hands in apology toward the statue of Kitsy, on whose eyes the pain had begun to aptly dissolve. So Kitsy is, yeah, a panda, I guess. We couldn't see the colors earlier, but looking at it now, it is a panda. Sojiro passed the mascot, bleeding red paint from its eye sockets, and began to walk the night park. The building colors had faded. The collection of machines was rusted. The man-made residents no longer felt the passage of time. Even the ghosts themselves could not endure the disparity between this forsaken place and its previous grand stature. It was like a fossilized dream. These were the ruins of a paradise both created and abandoned by a man and reality. The economy had stabilized and the standard of living was on the rise, so nobody was overly concerned with the future. These were the remains of a wild and exciting era. His breath turning to white wisp before him, Sojiro continued through the abandoned amusement park. Though void of a human presence, this was not nearly as frightening as the darkness deep in the mountains. City suburbs can take many different forms, but Kitsyland was unusual for an amusement park in so much as it had been built adjacent to a residential district. The park was surrounded by a forest, but even that ultimately was man-made. It was no different from the curtains on a classroom window. If he were to scale the iron fence encircling the Kitsyland and break through the 20 yards of forested trees, he would make it back to the familiar soundscape. Though the amusement park tended to arouse dread in the city folk, to Sojiro, it was a little different from the commotion and terror of downtown.
Areka.
The central plaza was silent as a grave. According to the map, the meeting spot was west of here. Waiting for Sojiro at his destination was a rugged, imposing, magnificent castle towering before the backdrop of the cloudy night sky. Even for an abandoned park, it was a remarkable structure. But it was like, have you seen like big amusement parks? It would be nice to, I mean it's illegal to go in, but it would be nice to look at it. Like for example, you got to get in, right, and see it. Like yeah, it's abandoned and all. Like such a waste, but it's fascinating to see because the structures, right? It looks good, and yeah, as he's saying here, it was a remarkable structure. If the roller coasters and Ferris wheel were loud, intense attractions, this was in comparison a quiet and easygoing one. It was one of Kitsyland's three iconic structures, and in a way, the wicked fortress that guided this paradise down the path of closure. Generally speaking, amusement park mazes generally fell into one of two categories. A labyrinth which disorients its visitors with its sheer size, and a house of mirrors which disorients visitors with optical illusions. Many of a labyrinth's guests enjoyed the brief sense of adventure that it afforded. Over the years, however, it would be usurped by the ever-increasing thrills of new attractions, such as the way of all trends, the curse of fads. The new must give way to the newer. On the other hand, the House of Mirrors was a time-honored, beloved staple. House of Mirrors, yes. Even within the confines of a classroom dimension, well-placed mirrors and well-directed light could both perplex and delight its visitors. And figuring in the cost of maintenance, a well-designed House of Mirrors could far outlive its labyrinth brethren. Even if both types faded into obscurity, they would remain a staple of what constituted an amusement park. However, that didn't mean that combining them would produce a double the fun. Together, they transformed from entertainment into an uncanny realm from which those who dared to step within could never leave. In a similar sense, Kitsy's Mystery Tour Castle was the park's very own otherworld. Indeed, 5% of visitors ended up requesting staff assistance to get out. Modeled after the European castles, it was greater than a football field in length, and the interior was further split into 3 floors. 2 floors above the ground and 1 below, lined with mirrors from top to bottom, equal parts complex and vast. The maze demanded at least 30 minutes, even from veterans. One visit was all it took to be struck by catastrophophobia for hours. It was this labyrinth that now stood in Sojiro's way.
真っ暗ってわけじゃないな。電気とかついてるんだろうか。
It seemed that Sojiro, unaware of what a house of mirror even was, concerned himself only with its lighting. He checked the letter from Aoko once more. The letter read, "I will be waiting in the first floor lobby of the House of Mirrors." That meeting place was definitely in here. There was something to see, but at least as he could make out light faintly through the open doors. Putting aside his suspicion, he headed toward the entrance. The sound of his steps against the brick-laid path echoed faintly. He was far from the hustle and bustle of the city. The park's clocks no longer made tick nor talk, and the winter's bite no longer blew in the night. From within the silence, a stillness that would cause any onlooker to hold their breath. Sojiro stopped abruptly at the entrance to the House of Mirrors.
ところで青崎、そんなところで何してるんだ？
He called out, turning back toward the plaza. I guess she got scared. A sound rang out as if someone had dove behind a garbage can, and it fell to the ground in their haste. A short silence ensued. For a moment, the abandoned park returned to its previous hush. Resigned to her having been exposed, the girl appeared from her hiding place. His voice died in his throat as he took in the sight of the girl's familiar face in an unfamiliar attire. What is she wearing? Battle gear? This is Aoko with her hair long flowing in the breeze. Was different from the Aoko that Sojiro knew. The resolute stance and the posture she took exuded the strength of her will. She stared directly at him with a sharp-eyed, piercing gaze. Her eyes were glowing with a dim phosphoric light enough to give Sojiro pause that he might be hallucinating. An icy coldness in a girl's strength. Sojiro lacked a sense of danger, but the sense of imbalance caused even him to feel the malice in the air. It was as though the Yuki Onna. So Yuki Onna is like a cold, right? A cold woman, something like that. Spirit of folklore had climbed out from a ghost story and appeared here in reality.
Aozaki.
Instinctively, Sojiro took a step back. Surprised, he was starting to feel concerned. An unpleasant premonition rose to the surface, bringing with it a sense of anxiety. In spite of this, he felt obliged to honor urban etiquette by seeing if she was alright.
その顔を見るに何かあったのかと一応聞いておくんだけど。
Without acknowledging him, Aoko took a step forward. Her figure, this atmosphere, Sojiro found himself recalling a recent memory. His twisted and knotted apprehension melted away and was replaced with a growing realization. The girl before him was very similar to someone he had seen before that night in the park, though he had only seen her from behind. Okay, so he saw them, but he didn't know that it was them. Okay. With increasing certainty causing him to swallow nervously, he noted that they might as well have been identical.
何をしていたかって話なら見ての通りよ。ここで獲物が通り過ぎるのを待ってたの。あなたが入ってから私も入って逃げ道をなくすつもりだったから。
Aoko said, perturbed by the swift change in plans.
そうか、待ち合わせ場所は合ってたんだな。
Sojiro was mildly relieved he had not got the wrong place. It was unclear whether he felt confident about dealing with what was to come or if he had simply failed to grasp the hopelessness of the situation. Aoko ignored his obtuse response and it continued.
私はね、しずきくん。嫌いな人とか憎い人とかは人並みにいるんだ。ただ、ちょっと変なのが敵になるやつの条件でね。
Cold emotion burned in her eyes. Her feet had already moved one step closer to Sojiro. Sojiro's sense of foreboding was growing stronger. Wondering if what he sensed was bloodlust, he retreated another step. Continuing as so, they maintained a distance of just 15 feet.
昔から私は嫌いな相手でも敵と思ったことはなかったの。でも逆に好きな相手を敵だと思うこともあった。理由は単純。
She held her right arm out. Oh, is she gonna actually attack him now? The light about her was no illusion.
当たり前のことだけど。私は私の感情を乱すやつが敵なのよ。
Her arm moved again. It was instantaneous. Oh! She actually attacked him. Something shot past Sojiro in the blink of an eye, missing him by just a foot to his left. I guess she meant to do that, right? To scare him a little bit for now. Yeah, I don't think she would miss like that. Before his eyes, a blue light, something akin to a fireball, had ignited from nothing. He finally understood what was happening.
ちょっと待った、今のは大変見覚えがある。
She ignored his dim-witted reaction.
外したか。
Oh, she actually missed? Okay, I thought she was like playing with him. Not playing, but yeah, trying to like, I guess, scare him a little. Aoko muttered to herself. The fist-sized hole the blue light had made in the House of Mirrors crackled and smoldered. A shot like that could easily cave in a human skull in addition to burning it to a crisp.
こんな射程で外すなんてアリスに見られたら自殺者ね。でもこれで分かったでしょ。二度目だものね、あなたにとっては。
Sojiro backed away swiftly. Things were beyond incomprehensible. He was close to losing the ability to think at all. All he could make out was the figure of the dependable student council president, or at least what he had thought was the president, and the memories of the park the night 2 days ago. He had never experienced anything like this, though most people living in a civilized country would have never seen anything like it either. A little weapon that could kill with nothing more than the pull of a finger had a way of suspending the ability of its target to determine between not just good and evil, but dreams and reality, past and future. And the more peaceful someone's life had been, the stronger that suspension was likely to be. All that one could think about was the fact that they were alive at that very moment. It was as he was an unwritten character on a blank piece of paper. There was no before, there was no after, there was only what came next. This was a very common thought process for anyone staring down the barrel of a gun.
命乞いはやめてね。意味ないから。でも恨み事ならご自由に。殺す側の義務として一言一句聞いてあげる。
Jesus, she's really kind of scary now. By saying it was pointless, she made it sound more like she would not listen to what he had to say. However, Sojiro was such in a state of shock that it did not even enter his mind to speak up. All he knew for reasons unknown was that girl in front of him wanted him dead.
嘘つきにも程がある。飛び丸のバカ、何がそんな生き物はいないだ。実際いるじゃないか、こんなお化けみたいなのが。
Dude, what if Tobimar doesn't know? Sojiro felt that if he had said that out loud, the second blast would come even quicker than the last, so he kept it to himself. His mental expletives steered his mind from paralysis to mere panic. This response came not from confidence, however. Someday, out of the blue, someone is going to kill me. While it may have seemed like a baseless belief to hold,
でもそうだった。都会には殺人事件がある。ルールを破れば殺されるのは当たり前だってちゃんと教えてもらってた。
to Sojiro, the situation seemed perfectly aligned with his inexperienced understanding that the city was coldly a pragmatic place. As far as he was concerned in this moment, being killed by a classmate was not something to be surprised by. In a society where murder was possible, he was able to accept this sort of situation as natural, while virtually of no concern was a series of events that led to Ako's aggression towards him. The only thing that truly confused him was Aoko's blue fireball. Sojiro swallowed with an audible gulp. To anyone who may have been watching, it was the response of a victim paralyzed by fear.
そういうことよ。ようやく理解してくれたわね。多くは語らないけど、あなたにはここで死んでもらう。魔術は隠匿するものなんて言ってもそっちには関係のないことだし、単に運がなかったって思えばいいわ。大事なのは私があなたを殺したってことだけだから。
Done talking, Aoko once again lifted her right arm. There was a hum like a machine. Blue light began to revolve about her arm beneath her sleeve. This was taking longer than the last time, leading Sojiro to believe that it was going to be much stronger than the attack that was still scorching the wall behind him. The realization caused his panic to heighten.
いやなんだ、つまり始末するとかしないとか、あの夜のお化けは青崎だったとか、都会は本当に込み入ってるとか、そういうことじゃなくて。
His thoughts became jumbled. His heart pounded like a hammer. This was no time to be standing still. He was not sure if the girl in front of him was really human. And more importantly, even if he could accept the events unfolding for him when all was said and done,
待て、人殺しはいけないんだぞ。
even if it was a fact of life in the city, Sojiro was not about to lie down and die.
分かってるわよ、そんなことは。
Sojiro's scream, still entirely oblivious, was just the thing to invoke Aoko's full wrath. Aoko fired a barrage of blue magical bullets. In an instant, Sojiro dashed into the shadows behind him, into the entrance to the House of Mirrors. He darted feverishly down the hall. After a mere few feet, he was left completely out of breath. This was due to his shock at seeing yet another attack fiercer than the first that he'd never seen in his life, and because he couldn't shake the thought that if he had moved even a second later, he would be dead. He could not afford to stop. The sound of merciless footsteps closed in behind him.
けど助かった。ここならなんとか。
He threw everything into his legs as he sprinted. A straight and narrow passage about 60 feet long connected the entrance to the main lobby. At this rate, if he could just make it to the lobby, he was sure he would be able to find as many hiding spots as he needed.
助かった。
He arrived in a large open space. This was a first floor lobby. There were 3 passageways. One led to the basement floor and one connected to the first floor maze. The others was a set of stairs leading to the second floor. Sojiro did not particularly care which one he chose, so trusting his intuition, he made a run for the first floor maze when... Aoko. She's there. He smacked his head into a transparent wall, okay. I thought it was Aoko, but I just got hit by his own self.
鏡
Or is that a normal mirror, or is that Aoko did that?
ええ、面倒だけどそれならフェアでしょ。追いかける方にも逃げる方にも有利不利がある。
A somehow cheerful voice echoed in his direction. There was no need for Sojiro to even turn around. In the very same mirror he had to crash into, he could see Aoko Azaki's figure slowly approaching.
それと1階の奥にある出口は封鎖しといたから。結界じゃなくて物理的に。やりすぎて封鎖っていうより瓦礫？土砂崩れ？どっちでもいっか。とにかく下手に出口に近づくと崩落に巻き込まれるから。生き埋めが嫌なら近寄らないことね。
Panicked by the impeding footsteps, Sojiro groped for the wall. He could see the stairs to the second floor. He didn't understand what Aoko had meant earlier, but he at least knew that the first floor was not going to save him.
ま、私としてはそっちのが助かるけど。形式上、事故死の方が後始末とか楽だから。
Behind him was a creature beyond words. As she continued her idle taunting, she lifted her right arm ostentatiously. Even from above her clothes, one could see some kind of strange incongruous pattern upon her body. Well, you can see her. Was it her arm? No, that's not her arm. No, I mean, like this, the bones. Yeah, it's not her bones. The veins beneath her skin, they made it seem as though something inhuman was circulating her body. Dude, imagine seeing this, right? Someone chasing you like this and wants to kill you with magic. What can you do, right? Whether out of pity or repulsion, Sojiro stopped for just a moment. His pursuer evaded his gaze.
ああ、これ？普段は塗り薬で隠しているんだけど、今日は特別。魔術刻印って言ってね、魔術師の証みたいなものよ。
Magical crest.
ほら、光が回ってるでしょ？これがさっきのスナップ。わかりやすく言うと弾丸の元。今日は調子いいし、私魔力を効率よく使うのだけは自信あるし。うん、あと30回ぐらいかな。さっきみたいな奏者ができるのは。
Honestly, it's quite frightening because how Aoko is very, very calm and like she's just talking normally, right? And she's out to kill Sojiro. Perhaps she was on an emotional high, for her voice had become frightfully friendly. Yeah, like she's talking very friendly, right? The substance of the conversation could not have been any more unsettling. However,
そもそも何を言っているかよくわからないんだけど、青崎。
わからない？弾数はあと30発ってこと。そこまで逃げ切ればあなたの勝ちよ。とりあえず今日のところはね。
今日はって明日もあるのかな。
Sojiro knit his brows. Aoko's expression creased into a scowl at his behavior. Although he was panicking, it seemed that deep down he still did not feel the full weight of the crisis. She knew he still didn't get it.
宣言はしたわ。自由時間はこれでおしまい。まだ罵り足りないだろうけど、その手の時間はキリがないしね。この辺りで諦めて。
It appeared Aoko had prepared this theatrical dialogue ahead of time, not to allow her opponent time for futile pleading, but to give him the time to curse her, his killer. Such forthright was her modus operandi with his victim. However, it was not going as she had hoped.
とにかくそういうことだから。じゃ、狩りの時間と行きましょうか。
Her voice was void of emotions, and her eyes are ruthless as they bored into her prey. This time, Sojiro finally accepted that he was gonna die. Silent as dead, it stepped into the remnants of a dream that had long since seen no visitors. There was no wind this night, nor a soul to be seen. Still, it heard the echoes from within, clasped its hands together, and grinned. But yeah, if this was Alice, Sojiro would probably be dead by now, right? And we saw how Alice fought, right? It was much more, intense. Its form, with hands clasped, resembled that of a budding tulip. The bearing of this artificial flower reflected in the cloudy mirror of the ticket's attendant's office next to the gate. Next to it stood a display board corroded by years of the rust. No number of visitors today, too. What is counting? A number today. The board had graffiti crudely scrawled atop one of the words. It was replaced with debts. The records board had long ago fallen to disrepair. After taking a full 10 seconds to digest what it was looking at, it made its own revision. Number of visitors. 3. 1. What? So we got... Wait, what is that? After appending this number with an index finger, she smiled like a flower. Okay. No, what is that? Is that Aoko? That is not Aoko, right? Then she began to walk toward the source of the sound. It had been 10 minutes since his rhapsody had begun to echo from the House of Mirrors. The amusement park's entrance returned to as it was before, soulless. So another person is here. Yeah, you saw that eye, right? I was trying to like remove the text, but yeah, we couldn't see it clearly for some reason. That was removing the text, but the background was, it was just dark, I guess. In the end, even if Sojiro had been the luckiest man alive, there was no way he should have been able to escape. The question, however, was how much of this was by design, and how much was sheer coincidence. Even Aoko, who had made all the arrangements, had no answer. Indeed, there were only 3 things she could say. It was taking longer than expected, he was putting up more of a resistance than she had anticipated, and that choosing the House of Mirrors was a mistake. She had really screwed the pooch on this one. The location itself was an excellent choice, as the House of Mirrors was perfect as a hunting ground, but seeing her own incompetence reflected in the mirrors was beginning to grate on her. The moment Aoko's right arm began to glow, Sojiro made a beeline for the staircase in front of him. A strobing series of blue flashes lit the room behind him. The hunter calmly followed their prey, and the prey desperately ran for his life up the stairs.
注文通り。そうでなくっちゃお膳立てした甲斐がない。
In stark contrast to Sojiro's frenzied escape, Aoko walked briskly up the stairs. She elected not to run after her prey in order to maintain a set distance. As she lacked confidence in her accuracy, the hardest thing for her to deal with would be if he charged right at her and went down fighting. But at the distance of 30 or so feet, he posed no threat. By the time her prey drew near, she could fire 10 shots and hit with at least 4 of them. Their position was just a moment ago hadn't been ideal. And that distance in space that opened if he flanked and rushed her, there was a chance, however small, that it could turn into a fistfight. Currently, Aoko's best weapon was bullets from her right arm. If she was going to capitalize on that advantage, it was in her best interest not to close the gap between them. If there was a good time to approach, it was only after her prey had become exhausted and had lost the will to continue. Would she pierce his leg, shoot him in the back, or perhaps would he just give up after losing himself in the labyrinth? But yeah, would Aoko really do that though? Like, would she hesitate? For example, Sojiro dropped. Would she hesitate to shoot him? I kind of think so. Yeah, because up until now, she hasn't really damaged him, like even hit him, right? Every shot that she does is a miss. And yeah, I mean, they were saying earlier that she was not really confident in her accuracy. But maybe there's some doubt in there. That's why she keeps missing, right? Maybe she doesn't really like to hit him. Maybe, who knows? Or perhaps would he just give up after losing himself in the labyrinth? Maybe she wants him to escape. The hunt would end when her target sustained some sort of injury and became unable to run. Because yes, this is a literal person that you're trying to kill. Has she ever killed anyone yet? I don't think so. On Sojiro's end, he could barely bite back on screaming as he bolted through the maze. Even running in a straight line had become difficult, much less searching for an exit. The corridor stretched out far before him, or so the mirrors blocking the path made it seem. Panicked, he made a turn to the right. Clutching his head in his right arm, Sojiro led with his left, groping through the air to see whether a wall was there or not. He dove down the hall to the left, narrowly dodging the bullet targets his life. Urged on by the sound of approaching footsteps, he ran without thinking. That last one was close. A hair closer would have meant his life. He caught the odor of a burnt hair from the back of his neck. He was very lucky. Or perhaps very unlucky. If he were actually lucky, then he would not be in this situation in the first place. The second floor of the house of mirrors was structured like a giant spiral. It wound left, starting from the outside wall. Eventually, it would lead to a dead end. The more he tried to escape, the more cornered he would become, as though he were trapped in a twisted guillotine. His stifled screams threatened to leak out as complaints. No matter what he did, he was going to be killed. All of his struggling merely served to prolong the inevitable. Yet he ran. No matter how many mirrored walls he rammed himself into, he ran. Even after crashing so hard that his forehead bled and he saw stars, he ran. paint shot through him at every turn. The more frantically he ran, the more intensely he smashed into the invisible walls. His body began to understand this rule and beg him not to run anymore. His breath was already ragged after sprinting a couple hundred feet. No matter how he thought about it, this was not normal. This was way too crazy. This was all just a bad joke. If he turned around now, she would have just apologized to him for taking it too far. His mind had gone blank as his body continued to slam into the mirrors again and again. His feet slowed down as they began to believe that perhaps it really was all a joke. But then... did he finally get hit? He felt a chill, a touch of death upon his neck. Oh, did he finally get hit? No! It would not be an exaggeration to say that Sojiro knew this kind of terrible chill far too well. Ever since he had arrived in the city, he had come face to face with more than one or two near-death experiences. For someone who didn't understand city life, his present predicament was not unlike when he experienced the traffic on the streets or the commuter rush on the station platform. He was far from an innocent babe, unable to comprehend life or fear. Rather, everything he had ever known became irrelevant when he was flung into a completely different cultural sphere. Even society's promises of safety, something urbanites took for granted, were threats unknown. So he was used to this already. Though if he were to be honest, he was dissatisfied with some things. Things superfluous to necessity. This world was overflowing with valueless things, and they were all dangerous in some way. Even the everyday necessities sold at the convenience store were, as far as he was concerned, amazing tools. Civilization had raised the standard of living so high that it had numbed humanity's sense of danger. The city's constant pursuit of wealth and convenience was a poison to a country boy like Sojiro. And he did not have the capacity to accept these conveniences. That it was possible for such conveniences to easily and suddenly be misused and cause unintended accidents had always made him anxious. Why? He had to wonder why he was even here. Oh, now there's... oh no, I thought it was blood. Okay. How ironic. It took the real threat of death to finally make him realize, like a divine revelation, what he'd failed to understand until now. He'd always had to expect the unexpected. Near-death experiences were more common than one might think. To begin with, safety was something that came at a price. Being alive meant that the opposite was always lurking around the corner. It was just like a street light at night. When the sun rose, its illumination would naturally disappear. Another barrage of strange projectiles whisked mercilessly by him. He recalled in the back of his mind the charred remains of someone at the hands of the blue flames 2 nights prior. Somehow, the situation reminded him of a horse being led by a dangling carrot. For now, he lifted his head and continued to run through the labyrinth. But for what purpose? Though he knew the pain in his chest was very real, he felt disconnected from it. The night sky, visible through the skylight, was a muddy ultramarine, no longer resembling the one he knew. And managed to calm himself. Sojiro began to laugh in despair as though something rather precious had been broken. Everything had become meaningless anyway. Even so, his legs somehow made their way forward to the side of her. But how do you even know where she's coming from, right? With all these mirrors here. I guess where the blue magic balls are coming from. Like a game of cat and mouse, Sojiro fled through the labyrinth of mirrors. Then after 4 minutes, a strangely unreal tension ended. The ninth shot of blue light hit inches away from him. It exploded the moment it made impact, launching Sojiro into the opposite wall. Of all the fire he had taken thus far, this shot indisputably brought him the closest to death. Groaning, he collapsed to the floor. His back was on fire with pain. He was not bleeding and was lucky he could still even scream. Yet his body refused to move. Physically and mentally, he still had something to spare. The pain was not so bad that it was preventing him to stand up. It was just that there was a skylight above him, and he could glimpse the dark of the night sky beyond. The feeling that overcame him was raw, selfish bout of grief. It was just so cruel. To have to stare at that for the remainder of whatever short life he had left. Sojiro's ragged breath slowed. For all intents and purposes, he had given up. I mean, at a point when you're being chased like this, like when you get hit, like what can I do now, right? And yeah, he's so tired already. Like I guess he ran so far, I mean so fast, I mean, because of adrenaline. And when you have adrenaline and when you stop, you fall down, all that what do you call this? Your body being tired is now gonna catch up, I guess, right? And now he cannot do anything. He had given up running away from the sound of pursuing footsteps and perhaps even a problem at the root of everything.
まあ、青崎に殺されるならいいかな。
Sojiro Shizuki felt things that in any other circumstances he would never feel. Incidentally, without exaggeration or embellishment, this was the only mistake he had ever made in his entire life. Staring vacantly into the night sky above, Sojiro listened as the footsteps drew nearer.
Give up?
Give up? It was the closest her voice had ever been to him. Perhaps feeling that he really had given up, she approached his collapsed form. In the dark mirror-lined corridor, he could not make out her expression. Without a word, Sojiro raised his eyes to meet his murderer.
返事がないならそれでいいけど。調子狂うわ。普通どうして殺そうとするのかぐらい聞くものじゃない？
Aoko spoke from within the shadows. His eyes widened in bewilderment. Now that she had mentioned it, he realized that would have been the obvious question to ask. He had more or less picked up on the fact that he was being killed for learning some secret, but it was human nature to want to know more.
そっか。それはそうなるな。
A simple affirmation. His face was a mixture of resignation and forlorn longing. He thought for a moment before.
でも言う必要はない。聞きたくないんだ。そういうのは。
He responded in a mature, subdued voice. His response was clear, or rather gallantly so.
そう。じゃ、殺すけど。死ぬの怖くないの？
I mean, anyone is gonna be scared.
怖いに決まってる。何より痛そうだ。
His face turned weary as he objected to which Aoko frowned. As nonchalant as he could be, he was honest about his feelings.
そりゃ怖いでしょ。私だって怖いと思うし。でも悪いわね。我慢して。人でなしと罵ってくれて結構よ。 今の私は本当にその通りだから。
The way she's just saying it, right? Like, sorry though, you just need to deal with it.
そういった意味じゃあんたと同じ。普通の道徳がないのよ。だから必要なら人も殺せる。
But yeah, she hasn't even killed anyone, right? I mean, I guess we don't know like more of her past, I guess, but she hasn't, right? Like she can just do this, I guess. Sojiro's finger twitched in response to her indifferent tone, as if to say that despite having given up on just about everything, his body could not let those words slide.
人殺しなんて良くないぞ。
分かってるって言ってるでしょ。
Ako raised her right hand. The light from the crest illuminated her face. This is goodbye. It goes without saying that her expression was unchanged. She was not crying nor she was smiling. She was a young woman who had excised her feelings. Deal with it was another thing Sojiro could not let slide. Sojiro could read on Aoko's face that she was not herself. She was in pain and to a degree he had never seen in her.
すまない。ちょっといいかな。
何？ここまで悲壮感を盛り上げておいて、やっぱり逃げるなんてのは却下よ。
Okay. He unconsciously smiled at Aoko's ruthless counter and breathed a sigh of relief. He had misread the pain he saw in her face. This was the same as Aoko. Or this was the same Aoko. Sojiro laughed out loud in genuine joy, a laugh that most other people would have taken as an insult.
遺言でも聞いてあげようと思った私が甘かった。っていうか、今の小バカにした笑いがあんたの遺言ってことで OK？
いや、そうじゃなくて、あそこにいる人は青崎の友人なのか？
I was wondering that person over there was a friend of yours. Out of nowhere, Sojiro pointed behind Aoko.
はあ？
Look at her face. Aoko thought that it must have been that old overused distraction technique. If this had been a Japanese comedy, this would be the part where she gave him a whack with a paper fan. But after giving it a second thought, she realized Sojiro didn't have the capacity for understanding old or even new tricks.
あんた何言って。
Perhaps his honest disposition had been to his benefit. Without thinking, Aoko gave into her curiosity and turned her gaze toward the direction in which his finger was pointed. And then, there. Something that should have not been there in the maze as something with a creaking wooden smile. It was ominous, creepy, uncanny figure of a girl. What is that?
人形？
Yeah, that's terrifying. Okay. So we'll take a break here. So, dude, this game is getting very intense now. I mean, we got a lot of episodes where it was just pretty much slice of life stuff, right? But now it's real. Aoko chasing Sojiro this whole episode and now got him cornered, but here comes this, I guess, puppet, right? But yeah, weren't Aoko and Alice fighting a puppet the other episode as well, right? So maybe this is one of, I guess, another one. But it has hair though, right? So I guess this is gonna be much more powerful. So let's see how they deal with this. I can't wait to see, especially Sojiro. I mean, of course, Aoko is not gonna be focusing on Sojiro now with this puppet being here, right? So let's see what happens. How do they deal with this? Or maybe Alice will come. Alice will be the savior. Who knows? Who knows, right? But yeah, we are going to continue this and do more of Witch and the Holy Night in the next one. So I'll just see you then, guys. Bye bye.